triangles are congruent. Okay, so we're kind of getting into some proof type stuff today. So, to start off, definition of two congruent triangles. Two triangles are congruent if corresponding sides are congruent and corresponding angles are congruent. Okay, so if your sides in both triangles are equal and if your angles in both triangles are equal. Now this symbol here, again, means congruent, okay? Congruent means they have the same size and shape. Okay, so they should have that same size and shape. Now our ways to prove that two triangles are congruent are all of these listed here. Okay, so for any triangle, okay, any triangle, so it could be acute or obtuse or right, doesn't matter, any triangle, we have side, side, side. Okay, that's what SSS means. Okay, so we have side, side, side. Now what that means, if I have two triangles, okay, I have my two triangles here. I know those first two sides are congruent to each other. I know the other two sides there are congruent to each other. And that third side is also congruent. Okay, so all of the corresponding sides are congruent to each other. We can say those triangles are congruent by side, side, side. The next one is side, angle, side. Okay, so again, if I have two triangles, okay, with side, angle, side, we know that there's one side in each that's congruent. We also have an angle in each that's congruent and a second side that's congruent. Okay, so with side, angle, side, you need an included angle. Now what that means is that this angle that's congruent has to be between your two congruent sides. Okay, so if it was off up here and you knew these two sides were congruent, but your angle wasn't between those two congruent sides, they wouldn't be congruent by side, angle, side. Okay, so it has to go in that order as you go around the triangle. Okay, you'll notice if I go this way, I have a side, an angle, and then another side. Okay, it's not an angle, a side, and another side. Yeah, I know, you got that. The next one is angle, side, angle. Okay, so we have angle, side, angle. Again, I have my two triangles. Now this time I'm going to start with an angle. So I know these two angles would be congruent. Then I need to move to a side. Okay, these two sides would be congruent. And then move to that second angle. So those two angles would be congruent. Now, just like with side, angle, side, with angle, side, angle, you need that included side. Okay, so just like the one before it, except this time it's an included side. So you have your two angles, and your congruent side has to be between those two congruent angles. Okay, it's not off to the side over here. Okay, if that happened, That would be angle, angle side. Okay, so we have angle, angle side. So again, we have our two triangles. Now, what I want you to notice is that angle, and angle, angle side both have two angles and one side, right?
Yeah.
Now, the difference between these two is that with this one, your side is included between those two angles. With this one, your side's outside those two angles. So if I had, again, these two angles congruent, and I have these two angles congruent, now instead of my side being congruent right here, I could write my side congruent on the outside of those two angles. Okay, so this one does not have that included side. That side is not between those two congruent angles. Now there is no such thing as angle side side. Okay? No such thing as angle side side. So I should not see you writing angle side side on anything that you are proving triangles. Okay? There's no such thing. Okay? You can't prove triangles given an angle and then a side and a side. Okay? You can with side, angle, side, but that angle has to be between those two sides. So if the angle's outside those two sides, it's not a thing. You can't prove it's congruent. Okay? I am sure about that. All right, the last one we have here is for right triangles only. Okay, so for right triangles only, we have hypotenuse leg. Okay, so we have hypotenuse leg. So for my pictures, I want to make sure to draw two right triangles. Okay, and I need that right angle. Now with hypotenuse leg, that means that your hypotenuse on both triangles have to be congruent. So I for sure need those both hypotenuse congruent. And then I need one of the legs congruent to each other in both triangles. Okay, so it doesn't matter which leg. I'll take this bottom one. But since it's a right triangle, okay, this would be considered hypotenuse leg. Both your hypotenuse are congruent, and one of your legs are. Okay? Questions on these different ways to prove two triangles congruent? Okay, you're looking at the sides and the angles to do this. At the bottom, what we want to do is mark each pair of triangles to illustrate the way used to prove those triangles are congruent. So we're going to do the first one together here. So if it says side angle side, we need to mark our sides congruent, one angle congruent, and another side congruent. So you have to be careful with this. If you notice, these are kind of reflected and mirrored. So you want to pick the angles that would look congruent. So here I could pick this side as one of my sides, meaning the other side I would mark congruent would be this side over here. Okay, now I need to flow to an angle. Okay, so I went side. Now I need an angle. Do you want to go up or do you want to go down? Down. So I have this angle congruent right here. This angle would also be congruent. Then I need another side. So since I went from this side to this angle, I have to go to this side here. For side angle side, again, you need an included angle. That means that angle has to be between those two congruent sides. Okay? Angle has to be between those. Okay, does that make sense on what you're doing for these problems? You're marking your picture to make that congruency statement true. Okay? I want you guys to mark the rest of them. Okay, so in your groups, mark the sides and angles congruent given that congruency. It doesn't matter. So wherever you start, right, you have to flow in order from that way. So on your triangle, it doesn't matter where you start.
Your hair looks dope. Let me braid it. I'm a good hair braider. I only put a knot in one person's hair out of one person's hair. Wow, I know I'm right.
All right, so I'm going to mark these pictures. Now, you may have started at a different angle or a different side, but you still could be correct. So if you have a question about what you wrote down, because it doesn't look like mine, ask me and I'll check it for you. So number 2 is angle, side, angle. That means I need 2 angles and 1 side, and that side has to be between those 2 angles. Okay, so if I have these 2 angles congruent, I could mark this side here congruent, meaning this angle would have to be congruent to this angle, so that side is between those 2 angles. Okay, you could have done it this way too, with this angle and this angle and this side and this side. Number 3, we have 2 angles and a side, except this time your side is outside of those 2 angles. Okay, so if I mark those 2 angles congruent, and I mark these 2 angles congruent, my side could either be this side or this side, but it cannot be between. Okay, so if it was between, it would be considered angle, side, angle. Yep. Yep. The next one is hypotenuse leg. So I know these are right triangles. Okay, I know I need my hypotenuse congruent. So I'm going to mark that right away. And one of my legs on both triangles is congruent. Okay, I shouldn't be marking any other angle except that right angle. The last one is side, side, side. meaning all of your sides. You shouldn't have any angles marked for this one. Okay, so I have these two sides congruent, those two, and that last one. Okay, so I shouldn't have any angles marked congruent for that one. Should all be your sides. Okay, questions on those ones? All right, on the back. So we have some given information. We have a picture. We want to use that given information and label our picture. Then we want to prove why these two triangles are congruent by using side, 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 angle, angle, side, angle, side, angle, or hypotenuse leg. Okay? So that's what we're writing out. Yeah. Well, you will always have your note sheet.
You won't have to remember anything.
You have your note sheet. It's right here. All right. So in number 6, we have AC is equal to DF. So I'm going to go to my picture and I'm going to label that. So AC and DF would be congruent. Next I have BC equal to EF. So we're going to label BC equal to EF. The last thing I'm given is angle C is congruent to angle F. So we're going to label C congruent to angle F. And we want to prove that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF. Okay? Looking at what I have labeled here, I have one side, an angle, and a second side. So with those properties on the front there, this would be congruent by side, angle, side. Okay, you just go in order. I have a side, angle, and then a side. Okay, that angle's between those two congruent sides. Questions on that first one, number 6? All right, 7. Again, start with your given and label your picture. So we have ED is equal to RS. Okay, so this side and this side. We have angle D is congruent to angle T. And we have DF equal to TR. Now we want to prove that triangle DEF congruent to TRS. Now what I want you to notice here, in this one, I have an angle between my two sides, right? However, in this one, that angle is not between those two sides, right? Okay? So since those aren't the same, okay, we can't prove that those are congruent. So this would be none or not congruent. Okay? So they both have to be the same. They both should be side, angle, side for it to be congruent. All right, doing another one here, number 8. So again, start with your given. We have AC equal to EF. So AC equals EF. We have CB equal to DF. And we have angle C congruent to angle F. And we want to prove triangle ABC is congruent to EDF. It would be side angle side. I have a side, an included angle, and that other side. Okay, questions? Where I'm getting these from? All right, I want you guys to do the rest. Okay, so 9 through 13. Do 9 through 13. Use what you're given. Don't include anything extra. Use what you're given to label those triangles, and then write out why you can using those properties on the front. What means? Isaiah, that symbol?
Yeah.
This symbol right here means perpendicular. Okay, so that upside down T shape means those are perpendicular. Okay?
No, never. Much not
Are you guys getting done for all these?
If something's perpendicular, what do you know about the angle? Yeah. So if BD is perpendicular to AC, what do you know about those two angles? Yes. I'm going to help you with number 9. I know you're not done yet, but I'm going to help you with 9 because it's a different one that I didn't actually go over. So, number 9, we're given BD is perpendicular to AC. Okay, if something's perpendicular, that means they create these 90-degree angles. Okay, so those would be congruent. Now, number 9, I'm also given AB is equal to BC. So I'm going to label that here. Now, what we're trying to prove is that triangle ABD is congruent to triangle CBD. What do you know about this side of both triangles? The side. So if I'm looking at this triangle, and I'm looking at this triangle, this side right here is congruent to itself. Okay, so both triangles share that side. Okay, so if they share that side, you can mark it as congruent to itself. Okay, so you want to look for freebies like that. So if it shares that side, it's congruent to itself. So if I look at my reasons, if I go from A to B to D, I have a side, an angle, and a side. Okay? So this one, to prove that those two triangles are congruent, would be side, angle, side, not hypotenuse, leg. Okay? Just because a triangle is a right triangle does not mean you're going to use hypotenuse, leg. The only time you're going to is if both of your hypotenuse are congruent. And in these triangles, we need to be quiet, please. In these triangles, your hypotenuse aren't congruent. Okay? So you can't use hypotenuse, leg, but you can use side, angle, side. Does that make sense? What you should look for if they share that side. Okay? All right, you should be good on the other ones. Okay, do the rest, please. This one, you don't have your hypotenuse congruent. Not much congruent.
That makes no sense. Why are you all side angle side?
That's the one that you use most often, to be quite honest. No, you will. It's not that long. It's pretty short. I want to go through this. Just wait. All right, so looking at 10, 11, 12, 13. So 10, we have AB equal to BC. We have angle E congruent to angle D, and angles A and C are right angles. Okay, so again, this is one of those where, okay, it's a right triangle, but your hypotenuse aren't marked congruent, so you're not using hypotenuse leg.
Angle.
It is angle, angle, side. Okay, I have two angles and my side not included between those two angles. For number 11, I have AB equal to DC. I have angle X congruent to angle Y. Now number 11 is similar to number 9. Okay? I share this side. If you have a shared side, you can mark that as congruent to itself. Okay? Now if I go in order here with each of my triangles, I have a side to an angle to another side. So this is side, angle, side. Number 12, we have AC equal to CB. Now we have segment CD bisects angle ACB. Now bisect means it's splitting it into two congruent pieces. So if CD bisects this entire angle, that means angle 1 and angle 2 would be congruent. Okay, so bisect is splitting it into two congruent pieces. Now again, looking at this side here of our triangles, they do share that side, so it is congruent to itself. Now if I go in order for both triangles, I have a side to an angle to another side, so this is side, angle, side. Last one, 13. We're given segment CA is perpendicular to AB. Perpendicular meaning creates a 90-degree angle. I also have DB perpendicular to AB, so that creates a 90-degree angle. Next thing I'm given is CA equals DB, and AO equals OB. Okay, with these two triangles, if I go in order, how can I prove that they're congruent? Side, angle, side. It is not hypotenuse leg. Okay? So when you're labeling these triangles, make sure you're looking for freebies. So some of these you had a shared side. So label that side congruent to itself. And then go in order around your triangle. So is it angle, angle, side? Is it side, angle, side? Stuff like that. Okay? So you go in order around that triangle.
This is not easy. What?
Huh?
Why did you spelled out school and then I changed it to my name?
So with this assignment, if you look where it says number 1 and number 5, it says information which can